He got off the Jeep, went to the aircraft, handed the film to the pilot, the canopy closed, and the aircraft took off.
The reason for them not talking is usually that they've been threatened, or they fall under the regulation JANAP 146, which talks about if anybody talks about UFO events that have been reported in the military, they're subject to fines, loss of pension and retirement, and every other thing.
At that time, in 1964, when he retired in 1976, his friends in the NSA and the CIA concluded that there were over 100 extraterrestrial civilizations visiting our Earth on a continuing basis.
The NSA
Are you
believes
one?
that there are 100...
Are you an ET?
Phil's asking if you were in...
No, I'm a UFO, unforgettable object.
Until we get the documents from the government, the fan club back there, until we can get the actual documents from the government, I mean, when the NSA admits it's withholding 156 UFO documents, that's from one limited search, and won't even show them to a federal court judge.
Of doing that?
Well, I don't speak for the government. Let me give you 4 reasons for the governments not to, all governments, it's not just the U.S., not to want to release data. First, they want to figure out how the darn things work. They make wonderful weapons delivery and defense systems.
Haven't been able to figure out in 43 years.
Set up, it might take 300 years. If you gave Columbus a nuclear submarine, he couldn't build 20 of them, even if he had an unlimited budget. You want to figure out how they work. You set up your secret project. Rule number 1 is you can't tell your friends without telling your enemies. They watch television, too. The second problem is the other side of the same coin. What if somebody else figures out how they work before you do? How do you defend against them? They make wonderful systems for attacking. You don't want them to know you know they know. And the third problem is the biggie. Suppose there were to be an announcement by highly trusted individuals around the world saying that indeed some UFOs are alien spacecraft. What would happen? You can imagine the stock market would go down, mental hospital admissions, church attendance would go up, I suppose. But the big thing that would happen would be an immediate push on the part of the younger generation, which was not alive when there wasn't a space program, unlike some of us older people, for a whole new view of ourselves, instead of as Americans, Russians, Chinese, Peruvians, whatever, as Earthlings, because obviously from an alien viewpoint, we are all Earthlings. There's no government on this planet that I'm aware of that wants its citizens to owe their allegiance to the planet instead of that individual government. Nationalism's the only game in town.
Actually, the question that you did pose, that why wouldn't the government release this information, there's many, many reasons. Economics is one, the power structure, the control structure of our planet.
Okay, whether or not the government releases anything, though, what I want to know is if there's 100 civilizations out there, if there are 4 civilizations out there visiting, if there's one, why don't they just show up, shake hands on the White House lawn?
I can tell you exactly why they won't. Because every time they do try to come by or fly by, what does our government do and the rest of the governments of the world? We send up fighter planes, we try to shoot them down.
Not true.
Not necessarily. Airline pilots have seen these things.
Ron, do you talk to the squirrels when you walk through the woods?
Well, sometimes, but that's my business.
They know that we know they're here. After you've been tracked on radar enough times, and I've talked to 100 military guys with great stories to tell, then you know the guy down there knows that you're here. So obviously their purpose is not to land on the White House lawn. And actually, the President of the United States doesn't speak for 5 billion Earthlings.
Well, or the Kremlin, courtyard or whatever.
But you're suggesting that they're here to say, hi, fellas, what can we do for you?
Well, they are, in fact. They know we know they're here, so why don't they resolve this mystery?
Maybe they're graduate students doing their thesis work on the development of a primitive society.
Are we in fact, Phil, some experiment, or Jean, somebody's thesis experiment?
We're already jumping to the conclusion that if there are UFOs, they have to be from outer space. Why? I mean, where is the connection?
I'm not jumping to that conclusion at all. If you look at manufacturing...
another country's military development
there may be other forms of consciousness that we have not been aware of.
Explain what you're talking about here.
I spend a lot of time talking to witnesses, and I try to listen carefully to what they say. What they describe are not spacecraft. They describe extraordinary extraordinary forms of energy that seem to appear out of nowhere, disappear into nowhere, can change shapes dynamically, and yet are physical. To me, that's very exciting. It's an opportunity to test some of the more advanced theories in physics today. I think this is something that should be addressed by physics. It's clearly beyond the capability of today's technology.
Right. What does that suggest to you? That things appear, they disappear, parallel universes?
I think that's what science is all about. I don't understand why Phil is so upset about having one more mystery. I mean, we don't understand the sun. We don't understand the immune system. There are all kinds of things.
Phil, you're not upset at the mystery. You're upset at people saying we've solved the mystery, and this is what it is.
Well, saying that some UFOs...
Wait a minute, let Phil have a chance.
Okay.
Poor Phil, he's down there in the end all alone, and it's...
Poor guy.
We fortunately live in a free country. Every one of us can believe what we wish or what we don't wish. I'm only here to try to present the other, the skeptical viewpoint, a viewpoint which I think is predominant in our National Academy of Science. I'm not a spokesman for them. But organized science, the physical... May I speak without interruption for just a moment?
Now I'm coming to smack you, Bill.
Okay, okay.
The National Academy of Sciences, the Physical Society of Physicists, the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, of which I am a fellow, none of these groups taken any official scientific interest in UFO reports.
I disagree.
Maybe because these kinds of promoters spout such scientific pseudo-science.
Okay,
Look,
Bill, now you're free to
Hey, I'm the physicist here who's just been attacked by you.
Bill's been so anxious, though. I want to let him
I would say I'm not a promoter. The conclusions that our magazine comes to is that there are many extraterrestrials who are visiting our planet. They may travel interdimensionally. They may travel through time. They may travel physically. And we have many 3,000 photographs. If there's a single photograph that is true, doesn't that mean that a lot of extraterrestrial races may come here? Some 10 billion...
Can't jump to that conclusion. I won't.
Some 10 billion stars...
You're not ready to...
10 billion stars in our galaxy. So that's a lot of stars.
One of the series of photographs that Bill mentions come from one man, Billy Meyer, in Switzerland. I've gone to the place in Switzerland where he lives. That man is not a poor farmer who happens to be seeing flying saucers. He has an entire cult around him. The negatives have never been available to scientists, and I think that is not the way we can solve the problem.
Okay.
And I would agree with that.
There's another problem we can't solve. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsors.
Color, but it had other colors moving around in it.
We saw flying objects containing maybe other people or another life form.
We're back. The subject is UFOs. Buzz, now you would like to see NASA get more money and space exploration really take off. Is it one way to do that, to encourage people's belief in extraterrestrials? Give us something, a carrot out there dangled in space for us to go after?
Well, I think there's a legitimate reason for a search for extraterrestrial intelligence, the way that NASA's defined it, and to search the skies for evidence of intelligent signals coming through electromagnetic radiation or anything else that's detectable to our senses.
That's good science.
And that's what we're trying to do, and that's what you could do very well on the far side of the moon where it's nice and quiet and we don't hear the noise that's created that emanates out from here.
Okay. Yes,
I think Mr. Phillip has the right idea in that we should all be open-minded. I mean, that's what science is all about, hypothesizing and then finding the experiment and making the conclusions. But I do think the supporters of the aliens are being a bit way off base here. I would like to know if you have any real evidence that you can share with us.
Yes, I do. I have evidence that I can share with you in our journal. We publish it 4 times a year. It does have physical evidence, has photographs. There are sound recordings that have come to light. We just had the case come to light with a...
Is there any case that is international almost, well-known, really?
Loads of cases from all over the world. The problem is most people aren't aware of the data. Look, there are 5 large-scale scientific studies. The biggest one done for the United States Air Force covered 3,201 sightings. So over 600 of these couldn't be explained, separate from the ones for which there was insufficient information. Quality evaluation says the better the quality, the more likely to be an unknown. That's one major study. It isn't mentioned in 10 skeptical books about UFOs. Don't bother us with the facts. Our minds are made up. That's the attitude of the debunker. And what the public doesn't know, we're not going to tell them. That's the second rule for the debunker. There have been 8 PhD theses done about UFOs, some of them having lots of good information. The problem is you won't get it on the 6 o'clock news. The problem is that many scientific journals won't publish UFO information. That doesn't mean most scientists don't believe in UFOs. There have been polls done that show not only that most general public people believe in UFOs, but the greater the education, the more likely to believe in UFOs.
Pardon me,
They want to believe in them.
No, it isn't that they want to believe in them. Most people are scared of the unknown. They'd just assume that these things weren't real because
we
another
want to
problem.
believe. We want
That's
to
a
believe,
small
Stan.
minority, just like
I want to believe. I'm skeptical, but I
5%
want
of the people don't believe we've been to the moon. You realize that?
Fine. I don't need to argue with them.
There are crazy views out there. A small percentage may want to believe. Just as, and I agree with you. I don't try to argue with them either, or with the ones who say the moon landing was all staged by television out in the desert.
Well, let's take a little poll here. How many people here in the audience would really want to believe if they thought there was evidence to suggest it? How many people? Raise your hand, clap, do whatever. A lot of people want to.
If there's
even
evidence.
Phil wants to believe.
If there's evidence.
No, he doesn't.
I think
Sure he does.
If he
Read his books. He does not want to believe.
If he truly investigated like he proposes to, he would find more evidence than he could ever imagine.
All right. We got a question here.
Yeah, I have an input and question for Stan. I met a four-star general, Chief of Staff of the Air Force, Curtis May, in 1987, and what he told me is that the CIA was withholding information from him about where the flying saucers were coming from. He told me that personally.
Had you had a few drinks with him before?
No,
Just
absolutely
checking.
not.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
Had to ask.
I have a question for Stan regarding President Reagan making 5 statements about the alien presence.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, on 5 different occasions, President Reagan did say that if there were alien visitors, we and the Russians would work together. He also has publicly stated that he's had a sighting of a UFO, Ron. I don't know whether he talked to you about that.
No, he didn't, and I've heard that too, but I don't buy that. Was it the National Enquirer or something?
It's been in other papers.
Yeah, well,
and this pilot has
was it
convinced-
originally in the Enquirer?
I've heard about it elsewhere.
Was it originally in the
This-
Enquirer?
One of these articles was.
I think was.
Now, Ron, wait
because
just
he never
a minute,
told
Ron.
me. It's a major government cover-up because he never told me.
Have you asked him?
Yeah, absolutely. He would have. I swear to you, he would have said something if he really.
This is when he was
UFO.
governor, not
I'd
when
have
he
been
was
like
president.
first on his list to call.
Which list, Ron?
Okay, if there's so much evidence and, identification of these things, why is it, I have 2 questions for you. Why is it still unidentified flying object? And second question, why is there a super paranoid attitude about the government trying to cover up all this? Why should they?
Now, wait, if you're asking...
Wild conspiracy theory, Jacques?
We keep using loose terms like belief and evidence. Science is not about belief.
Right.
And evidence is not something we have. We have a lot of very interesting anecdotal information. The science has never been done. There are a few individual scientists who have spent their spare time and their own money trying to, like myself, trying to investigate those cases all over the world. I think we have a good case that something should be pursued, but we have not done the science. Until the science is done, we're not going to have the answer.
Okay, hang on a sec, because we got to go to a commercial. We'll be right back, though.
Something here knows the answer.
I may have the answer. Let's have a look.
We're back talking about UFOs. Buzz, give us a little inside dope, a little locker room chatter. The astronauts, you guys ever kick around the idea of UFOs, extraterrestrials?
Well, I just came from 2.5 days with Neil Armstrong. We were talking about what we did on the lunar surface, and people were helping us document the exact facts. And, any of us could be rather wealthy if we just disclosed all of a sudden that we saw UFOs. But we don't do that because we're credible people. If you want funds to support something, you go to the Congress, and the Congress is going to respond to the people, and I'm trying to get back to the moon and on to Mars, and that's what I think we need the finances to do, rather than to support a lot of these bizarre studies.
Yes, Sean. A smattering of applause.
Gordon Cooper, who is someone I think we both respect, told me that he had seen something that he could not identify, not from orbit, but from the ground when he was a test pilot.
Well, I just told you that I saw something that I couldn't identify.
But you just identified it.
No, I didn't.
But there's...
It's still
It doesn't matter in a specific case. There's thousands of reports.
Sure.
If one single report is true, then the UFO mystery is not a mystery anymore, that we are being visited by extraterrestrials.
But so far, it hasn't been to anybody's satisfaction.
But not one has been established.
Science wants repeatable experiments.
Well, there is a repeatable. How could you repeat? Oh, I want you to land here again, so the government can shoot SAM missiles at you. And
Science is also ready to respond to stimuli. When I was at the University of Chicago, they had a balloon ready to launch with a box of emulsion to record particles from the sun when a detector said there'd been a solar storm. They couldn't reproduce it, they couldn't duplicate it, they were ready to observe it when it showed up. We have lots of sightings from all over the world. People like you and I have had some grants fortunately, are able to go out and check on those cases. The money is piddling compared to what is used in big research and development programs. I've worked on a number of them, but there is evidence, not in terms of a prominent person saying, I saw it, but I don't have the report. What good would that do?
Well, the answer may come, Ron, in the tens of millions of low-cost video cams that tens of millions of Americans now have, because still photos of UFOs are terribly easy to hoax, as his magazine demonstrates.
I disagree.
But video is much more difficult, not impossible, much more difficult to hoax.
There are
with
good
tens
videos
of millions
now.
of video cams in another year or so, you may have loads of film showing E.T. craft.
Let me get
I will
He's never
publicly
Let's get a
admit I'm
question.
wrong.
He's never
Yes, I
seen
know,
my
Bill.
magazine
I
before
know
today.
you disagree
Never.
with him, Bill. I know.
Hi.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I don't have a question, but I have a comment. Is that allowed?
A brief one. Yeah.
All right. For personal reasons and for the spontaneous reasons of the emotions I'm feeling right now, watching all of you and listening, I had to stand up and comment. I'm watching 5 men, older than me, one younger than me, probably, sitting here bandying about an issue of tremendous magnitude with a recipe of old ideas. All of you got here in limousines, 250-year, or cars, or bus. 300 years ago, it would have been on horseback. If somewhere along the line, somebody had not opened their minds to a new idea, new evolution and the changes in so much of what we all enjoy today wouldn't be existing. There's a flaw. I find humankind more phenomenal than the phenomenon of extraterrestrials.
The SETI program has been looking along the radio bands for evidence of technological civilizations out there for some time now, and they came up with a big goose egg, Zippo.
It's
nothing.
a seriously flawed program, Ron, that doesn't really involve science so much as what I would call cultism. Charismatic leadership, a narrow view. We assume there's life out there. We assume they're trying to communicate with radio. We assume that our systems can pick them up. If they're using lasers, we won't be able to pick them up at all. But those guys are totally unwilling to look at the UFO evidence.
Well, they're focusing in one particular direction.
Well, but if you're interested in...
Why doesn't advanced technology doesn't give some evidence of radio technology and radio waves going out into space?
Because they're much more advanced than the radio. If they have, well, we're a little ant race on a small planet on the edge of the Milky Way.
Looking for smoke signals 100 years ago would have been one way to check on long-distance communication.
Yeah.
But it certainly isn't the most
If they're
advanced
that
technique
advanced,
around.
though, there's something kind of pedestrian about the whole idea of flying saucers and little green men.
That's
Wouldn't
why
they be more advanced than that?
That's true, because some of them do travel interdimensionally.
Is that, Jacques, is that are we getting into your country now, interdimensional travel?
So I think that was 20 years ago, you know, that was a very marginal idea in science. Today, it's not such a marginal idea in science. If you look at the Sky and Telescope magazine a year and a half ago published an article about the creation of universes with multiple dimensions moving at right angle to each other. That's a very interesting idea. It's a theory, and perhaps the UFO phenomenon is giving us the opportunity to test some of those advanced theories in physics. I think that's why we should look at it.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay, I've got a comment about what I've been hearing about these cover-ups and the SETI program. If we have a government that has military regulations that prevents pilots from revealing that they've seen a UFO before they've been debriefed or at all, if we have astronauts who are told to shut up by what they see, some of them, and if we have a National Academy of Sciences who is funded by the government and works as part of the government, why would we assume that any of these are going to tell us what they find instead of just wrapping it up and hiding it? Why should we assume that they're going to tell us?
They won't.
Well, we assume that they don't.
As a matter of fact, we have very advanced technology for building stealth aircraft. We can try and have kept that secret from potential enemies. But anything that is as universal as ETs visiting Earth, it would be ridiculous to try to keep it secret. If there were a secret crash saucer recovered from New Mexico, why keep it secret and have one land or crash in Moscow or Paris
Maybe
or
one has,
London
Phil.
and let them beat us to the punch by saying, hey, the first ET craft chose Mother Russia to land rather than...
They want to use the technology first. That's what matters here is technology. You know that. You covered the technology beat for 40 years.
Take another question.
Phil Klass, your time has come to an end. Why don't you retire and go fishing? We're in a new area. The UFOs are here, and they're going to stay here. They're not going away. Go fishing.
That's right. Do UFOs go fishing? Do they like to fish?
Fishing for UFOs.
They hang on the water quite a
I'm
bit.
not a fisherman. I try to go sailing and downhill skiing with my wife as much as my aviation week.
One thing he doesn't do, Ron, we talked about the crash saucer. My colleagues and I have talked to well over 200 witnesses involved in that case and been down in New Mexico many times. Phil has talked to none of those witnesses.
Wrong.
You have? You hadn't as of 2 weeks ago.
All right.
3 weeks ago,
I
whatever the
had
time.
communicated with one long ago, but there were 3 people who allegedly were first-hand witnesses. Mac Brazel, the rancher who found the debris, Major Jesse Marcel, who went out to his ranch, and a man named Sheridan Cavett. There are 2 of those 3, Marcel and Brazel, are dead. Cavett is still living. Have you talked to Cavett?
Yes.
What did he say? Did he?
And I've talked to, been in Marcel's house, and I've talked to him.
Cavett is living today.
Yeah, he was a counterintelligence corps guy.
Obscure here.
Yeah.
He denies.
He has done no investigation of the case. That's what it boils down to.
He denies.
Hang on a second.
The crash saucer.
We're running out of time here. We've resolved this whole question of UFOs.
Right. Naturally.
And we'll be back right after this. Not sure yet about UFOs. Well, join us tomorrow for part 2 on the subject. Meet some people who claim to have extended contact with individuals from outer space. Before we go, let me thank my guests, Philip Klass, Jacques Vallée, Bill Maxwell, Buzz Aldrin, Stanton Friedman. Until then, live long and